So today I'm going to teach you the original paper of 2025, the exam review of this compulsory question for the UPSC aspirants. So those who are going to take the 2026 examinations and they are studying in my classes, or those new and old students who are studying by themselves, this video will be very, very important for them to understand that how to answer these questions. तो जल्दी जल्दी लाइव आ जाइए, चैनल को लाइक एंड सब्सक्राइब कर दीजिए एंड सी that this is my application where you can find the batch, the study material and the test series. And now you can see, ये देखिए, this is the questions which are asked, and the question which is, which has to be done, the name of the poem is Myself. The name of the poem is Myself. And if you have the question paper with you, and I have that script in my hand, you can see on the screen also. I will just read it to make you understand that how to read these poems and how to understand myself. I have to live with myself, and so I want to be fit for myself to know. I want to be able, as days goes by, always to look myself straight in the eye. I don't want to stand with the setting sun and hate myself for the things I have done. I don't want to keep on a closet shelf a lot of secrets about myself and fool myself as I come and go into thinking no one else will ever know the kind of person I am, I really am. And this is the poem, this is how it goes. And yes, it is a simple poem, yet you have to analyze it a lot. You have to understand the concreteness and the in-depth about what the poet is trying to say. Unless and until you will not read this poem 2 times, you will not be able to decipher that what are these questions which are asked and how to relate these questions with the poem given in the in your original paper of UPSC IAS English. Fine. So देखिए क्या लिखा है, I have to live with myself, and so now my first question is, what is the main message or moral lesson of the poem? इस पोएम को पढ़ करके आपके दिल और दिमाग में क्या आया कि क्या मैसेज है, क्या मॉरल लेसन जो है वो पोएट देना चाहता है, एंड हाउ डज द स्पीकर, जो भी स्पीकर ये बोल रहा है, किस प्रकार से वो स्पीकर एम्फसाइज करता है दिस थ्रू आउट द पोएम. मतलब वॉट एवर द मैसेज, वॉट एवर द मॉरल लेसन इज, हाउ द पोएट इज एम्फसाइजिंग दैट मॉरल लेसन थ्रू आउट द पोएम. So see, the question which is asked related to the poem Myself is not at all tough. It is only the understanding how you have understood the main poem. And for understanding, you have to have lot many arms and ammunitions in your mind. And then you can scan, khat, you can scan it. And then you can just note it down on a piece of paper in some corner. And then when you start these answers, you will write well. Now, for example, I'm going to take this first question. Fine. और आगे हम लोग बढ़ते हैं और इस पोएम को, इसको एक काम करिए स्टूडेंट्स, इसको एक बार अपने कॉपी में लिख लीजिए. See, just because I'm going to analyze this answer for you. And now you will understand that why this is such an important section of UPSC which can give you much more marks to win the race. It is like mathematics. 2 + 2 is equal to 4. So if you have the formula in your mind that x + y whole square is equal to x square + y square + 2xy, in the same way, I make my students learn so good about the unseen passage that they get बेस्ट मार्क्स इन दैट एंटायर सेक्शन. और ये मार्क्स आपको कॉम्पीट करने में इन टोटलिटी बहुत हेल्प करते हैं. तो जो भी आईएएस एस्पिरेंट्स हमें देख रहे हैं इस समय, लाइव देख रहे हैं, हमारे जो स्टूडेंट्स देख रहे हैं, जो नए स्टूडेंट्स हैं, एक बार कमेंट बॉक्स पे ज़रूर आएँ, क्योंकि ये यूपीएससी की क्लास है. और बिना आपके साथ के मज़ा नहीं आएगा कि आप कितने बच्चे यूपीएससी के या पीसीएस के देख रहे हैं। चलिए आगे बढ़ते हैं, और ये देखिए ये क्वेश्चन नंबर 5 है। फाइन, नाउ इफ आई सी, नाउ सी, ये दिस इज द नेम ऑफ द पोएम। नाउ the question number 1 which I just read it, what was that question? What is the main message of the poem and how does the speaker emphasize this throughout the poem? Now, after reading after reading this poem myself, you will find that the central message of the poem myself, इसका जो central message है, is the necessity of self respect. आपने देखा होगा उस पोएम में, अगर आप पढ़ें ठीक से उसको स्क्रीन के सामने अपने सामने गूगल पे खोल लें, गूगल पे उसको खोल लें अपने मोबाइल पे, तो पोएट कह रहा है या मैसेज देना चाह रहा है कि क्या सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट मैसेज है? इट इज द नेसेसिटी ऑफ सेल्फ रेस्पेक्ट। पहला पॉइंट, इट इट इज द necessity of self, it is the necessity of self respect, एक और वर्ड, honesty and moral integrity, honesty and moral integrity. ये immediately you can understand the moment the poem starts that the poet is talking about the self respect, कितनी जरूरत है उसकी, आत्मविश्वास की, आत्मसम्मान की, ऑनेस्टी की एंड मॉरल इंटीग्रिटी की। और जो स्पीकर है, द स्पीकर stresses that one must live authentically with oneself. What is the speaker trying to stress? He is laying stress that one must live authentically. One must live authentically with oneself. किसके साथ? अपने साथ। कम से कम अपने साथ ऑथेंटिक रहिए। with oneself. For external validation would be insubstantial if one lacks self assurance. क्योंकि जो बाहरी वैलिडेशन है वो बिल्कुल भी सब्सटैंशियल नहीं होगा अगर एक इंसान खुद में सेल्फ एश्योर्ड नहीं है। इसीलिए कहते हैं मॉरल इंटीग्रिटी, सेल्फ एश्योरेंस, सेल्फ रेस्पेक्ट, सेल्फ ऑनेस्टी, सेल्फ इंटीग्रिटी, सेल्फ विल पावर is all important to become something. इसीलिए इस पोएम का मैसेज is very important to understand. And why this poem is given in the UPSC? Because this poem will also teach the UPSC aspirant something. So this message, yeah, this fact aligns with existentialist theory, where the self confronts its own freedom and authenticity, and with humanist psychology emphasizing inner worth. And if you read the poem once again, I will again open this poem and see that the poem employs a repetition of I don't want. You can see, देखिए, I don't want to stand with the setting sun. उसके बाद देखिए, I don't want to keep on a closet shelf. फिर देखिए नीचे, I don't want to dress up myself in sham. फिर नीचे देखिए, I don't want to look at myself. 3, 4, 5 बार. So the poem employs repetition of I don't want, और उसके बीच में I never, I never, I never, I never. So ये क्या है? हम जिस आर्म्स एंड एमिनिशंस की बात करते हैं, नॉलेज की बात करते हैं, कि अगर आपको ये पता है कि दिस पोएम इज एम्प्लॉइंग रेपिटेशन ऑफ, द पोएम इज एम्प्लॉइंग रेपिटेशन, और वो क्या है वो आप देख भी सकते हैं, मैंने पढ़ भी दिया. आई डोंट वॉन्ट एंड आई नेवर, I don't want and I never. ये क्या है? ये है, इसको कहते हैं एनाफोरा. ये देखिए, the moment you have the knowledge, you can immediately pick it out. अरे यहाँ पे तो ये लगा हुआ है, ये तो एनाफोरा है, ये तो लिटोट्स है, ये तो हाइपरबोल है, ये तो सिनेडॉकी है, ये तो मेटेनॉमी है, ये तो पैराडॉक्स है, ये तो हाइपरबोल है, एंड सो मच ऑफ मेनी थिंग्स. सो इसका मतलब क्या हुआ कि जब नॉलेज आपके पास होगी, यू कैन स्कैन इट प्रॉपरली. सो द पोएम एम्प्लॉयज रेपिटेशन ऑफ आई डोंट वॉन्ट and I never, anaphora, to stress. किस चीज के लिए वो लिखा है, ये ऐसा किया गया है? To stress resistance against hypocrisy. To resist, इसको जरूर लिखिएगा, to stress resistance. Resistance, ये this is used to stress resistance against hypocrisy. Against लिखिए, पहला वर्ड लिखिए, hypocrisy के against illusion and shame. Illusion and shame. Fine. Now the imagery of, देखिए यहां पे पोएम आपके सामने अगर हो तो आप फिर देख सकते हैं दैट, मैं फिर खोल देता हूं पोएम आपके सामने, आप गूगल पे उसको खोल सकते हैं सामने. ये देखिए, लुक माई सेल्फ स्ट्रेट इन द आई. I want to be able, as days goes by, always to look myself straight in the eye. So here the imagery of look myself straight in the eye symbolizes inner confrontation, while stand with the setting sun, आगे क्या है? I don't want to stand with the setting sun. तो ये जो stand with the setting sun है, this evokes the end of life, stressing that self-honesty matters at death's threshold. Self-honesty matters at death's threshold. So figuratively अगर हम देखें, figuratively एक टर्म आया है यहाँ पे, closet shelf. I don't want to keep on a closet shelf. So Figuratively, this two words, closet shelf, suggests hidden secrets. A metaphor, ये क्या है? ये hidden secret है, ये metaphor है for repression. Psychoanalytical reading. Fine. Now, by contrasting the false appearances, देखिए इसमें लिखा है कहाँ गया? I am bluster and buff and empty show. So, by contrasting the false appearances, bluster and buff and empty show with self-respect, the speaker foregrounds moral clarity. Thus, the poem teaches that self-respect surpasses societal praises. Morally, moral authenticity proves true freedom. जो moral authenticity है, that proves true freedom. So this is the analysis of the question number 1 of this entire passage, myself. Fine. Now, question number 2 अगर आप देखें, शुरुआत में दिखाया भी था आपको, how does the speaker define self-respect? How does the speaker define self-respect, and why is it so important to him? And why is it so important to him? This is the question number 2. Fine. Now, self-respect in this poem, myself, is defined as living truthfully. क्या डिफाइन किया है सेल्फ रेस्पेक्ट को इस पोएम में? एज लिविंग ट्रूथफुली, विदाउट डिसेप्शन, विदाउट शेम, and being able to face honesty. It is not dependent on wealth. It is not dependent on fame or others' opinions, but rooted in personal conscience. The speaker views self-respect as the ultimate measure of integrity. One must avoid illusions. जो आपको लाइन मैंने बताया था, one must avoid illusions, that is bluff and empty show, and strive to be conscience free. So from a Kantian moral perspective, Kant से बना है Kantian, from a Kantian moral perspective, this reflects the categorical imperative treating oneself as an end, not a means. And from a psychoanalytical lens, अगर आप देखें तो ये जो poem है myself dramatizes the tension between the superego. And what is the superego? Moral conscience and ego, that is the self-image. So the act of looking straight in the eye suggests psychological self-analysis, confronting hidden desires or even guilt. Again, figuratively, self-respect is represented through metaphors of vision. और वो आप पोएम को देखेंगे, उसमें दिखेगा आपको फिगरेटिवली, कोट अनकोट में है, सी व्हाट अदर्स में नेवर सी. एक और है, मैंने रिपीट भी किया है, स्टैंड विद द सेटिंग सन. एंड दीज all figurative metaphors of vision imply both introspection and existential finality. And the symbol of the setting sun underscores mortality, making self-respect crucial before life's end. And this term self-respect liberates the self from hypocrisy, enabling genuine existence, as is also the central idea of Emily Dickinson's I am nobody. Thus, for the speaker, self-esteem, self-respect alone is the life's ultimate moral compass. So this would be somehow the right answer to the second question. Define self-respect क्या होता है और why it is so important to the speaker. Now, क्वेश्चन नंबर 3 क्या था, आप पीछे जाके देख भी सकते हैं. हाउ डज द पोएट यूज रेपिटेशन? हाउ डज द पोएट यूज, बहुत रेपिटेशन है ना, देखा आपने इसमें. हाउ डज द पोएट यूज रेपिटेशन टू एम्फसाइज की आइडियाज, टू एम्फसाइज key ideas of the poem. Understood? How does the poet use repetitions to emphasize the key ideas of the poem? As I have told you in my last 10 to 15, 20 minutes of my lecture, making you understand the integrity and the value of this unseen passage, and if you get a hold on understanding its entirety, you will feel that it is the most easy and the most capturing of the marks for the UPSC total. A repetition is a dominant rhetorical strategy. हमने आपको क्या बताया था? You have to understand rhetoric prosody, rhetorical things. So here in this poem, repetition is a dominant, क्या है ये एक डोमिनेंट रेटोरिकल स्ट्रेटजी है. इट इज द डोमिनेंट रेटोरिकल स्ट्रेटजी. It is, repetition is the dominant rhetorical strategy in the poem, functioning as both emphasis and rhythm. इसमें लिख देते हैं in the poem, functioning, इसको आप लिख भी ले, functioning as both emphasis, as both emphasis and rhythm. The recurrence of, आपने देखा पोएम में recurrence किसका हो रहा है? I don't want, I never, I don't want, I never. So the recurrence of I don't want, I never builds a cumulative insistence by means of anaphora. हमने शुरू में बताया था आपको anaphora क्या बिल्ड कर रहा है इसके रेपिटेशन से. इट इज बिल्डिंग अ क्यूमुलेटिव इंसिस्टेंस बाय मींस ऑफ एनाफोरा, मिररिंग द स्पीकर्स मॉरल डिटर्मिनेशन, कि हम जो डिटर्मिन्ड हैं वो दिखा रहा है. एंड दिस डिवाइस अलाइंस विद स्पीच एक्ट थ्योरी. आपने स्पीच एक्ट थ्योरी के बारे में पढ़ा होगा. ये जो डिवाइस है ये अलाइन कर रही है विद द स्पीच एक्ट थ्योरी, वेयर रिपीटिशन एनैक्ट्स कमिटमेंट. जब हम कोई भी चीज रिपीट करते हैं बार बार, उससे कमिटमेंट का इनएक्शन होता है. सो वेयर रिपीटिशन एनैक्ट्स कमिटमेंट, नॉट मियर डिस्क्रिप्शन. इट इज नॉट ओनली डिस्क्राइबिंग, इट इज ओनली कमिटिंग समथिंग. एंड ये जो फ्रेज है आई डोंट वॉन्ट, द फ्रेज आई डोंट वॉन्ट rejects hypocrisy, whether hiding secrets, dressing in shame, or living for empty show. And ये जो anaphora है ना, anaphora मतलब repeated openings. This anaphora intensifies the negative stance against falsehood. उसी तरीके से likewise I never, I want frame a contrast. I never और I want, ये देखिए, this is framing a contrast, negating illusions while affirming conscience. And from a formalistic reading, The repetition creates internal rhythm, guiding the reader's attention to the theme of integrity. And if we talk about from the lens of the psychoanalytical thing, the insistence dramatizes repression, which is an effort to repeatedly convince oneself of authenticity, suggesting an unconscious struggle. Again, I would say, figuratively, repetition serves as a hammering refrain. रिफ्रेन क्या होता है? लास्ट में दो लाइन जो रिपीट होती है गाने में या पोएम में. तो रिपीटिशन क्या हो रहा है? इट इज सर्विंग एज अ हैमरिंग रिफ्रेन akin to the mantra of self purification. And by reasserting the refusal to hide or fool, the poem emphasizes the psychological necessity of truth. It is not accidental redundancy, but deliberate moral reinforcement. So again, I would say that thus repetition functions as both a stylistic and thematic device. It transforms abstract values into palpable conviction, ensuring the reader internalizing the central message of self-respect and conscience. Fine. So these were the three questions which was answered. Now, question number 4 or A, B, C, D or D. अब पूछ रहा है एग्जामिनर, which lines stand out the most to you and why? Which lines stand to you and why? क्यों वो लाइन आपके लिए स्टैंड करती है? And how do they contribute to the overall theme of the poem? How they contribute to the overall theme of the poem. Now, again coming to the poem, if you have in front of you, line hai, I want to look myself in the eye. So ये जो line hai, I want to look myself in the eye, stands out for its stark metaphorical force. It encapsulates the poem's entire theme. The need for moral clarity and authenticity. The imagery of vision central throughout the poem crystallizes into an act of confrontation, facing oneself without illusion. And from a psychoanalytic perspective, this suggests a confrontation with the unconscious, the ego daring to meet the superego's grace. And from an existentialist lens को अगर आप देखें अस्तित्ववाद के लेंस से, it signifies the Sartrean authenticity, accepting responsibility for one's choices and moving towards the Lacanian mirror stage, wherein the self begins to accept the identity, discarding, you can say, a misrecognition. Another striking line in this poem, I see what others may never see, I know what others may never know. ये भी बहुत striking line है. And this line emphasizes, you can say, intensity, suggesting that self-awareness surpasses social perception. It resonates with phenomenology, where lived experiences defines truth beyond external validation. Again, figuratively, both lines which I have just told you use metaphor and parallelism to strengthen the idea of inner truth. And these extremities, yeah, these basically we can say that these or they epitomize Descartesian idea of I think, therefore I am, resolving the existential conflict between individual and society. So that is why these lines stay important, or why I told you now. And in this question, the question number 5, there are 5 questions. The last is, how would you relate this message to modern society, especially in a world influenced by social media और पब्लिक इमेज? आप किस प्रकार से रिलेट करेंगे इस मैसेज को आज के मॉडर्न सोसाइटी में, खास तर से वो वर्ल्ड जो कि सोशल मीडिया और पब्लिक इमेज से किस तरीके से वो इन्फ्लुएंस्ड है या मैड हो गई है? सो मॉडर्न सोसाइटी बेसिकली इज प्लेग्ड, प्लेग समझते हैं ना, तो ये अच्छा टर्म है, अच्छा वर्ड लगा सकते हैं, दैट मॉडर्न सोसाइटी इज प्लेग्ड बाय अ परपेचुअल सेंस ऑफ आइडेंटिटी क्राइसिस. आज के ज़माने में जो नवयुवक हैं या जो नया जनरेशन है, मिड सेगमेंट के भी लोग जो हैं, वो आइडेंटिटी क्राइसिस से बहुत बुरी तरह से प्रभावित हैं. So our modern society is actually plagued by a perpetual sense of identity crisis, augmented by social media, curated images, performative identities, and in this light, the poem's insistence on self-respect and authenticity feels especially urgent. ऐसा लगता है कि वाकई में ये अर्जेंट है. सोशल मीडिया एंड शॉप अल्कोहलिज्म मतलब शॉपिंग करना, ऑफन थ्राइव ऑन इल्यूजन, प्रोजेक्टिंग, वही वाला लाइन आएगी, ब्लस्टर एंड ब्लफ एंड एम्प्टी शो. द स्पीकर्स रिजेक्शन ऑफ फॉल्स अपीयरेंसेस parallels the need to resist the digital performity. And from a Marxist perspective, अगर हम Marxist perspective से देखें तो the struggle for fame and wealth in the poem anticipates modern commodification of identity. Online presence becomes a form of capital, yet the poem warns that without self-respect, such capital is hollow. कितनी बड़ी बात सिखाई है कि अगर सेल्फ रेस्पेक्ट नहीं है तो आप कुछ भी कमा लो, सारी कैपिटल हॉलो है. So, from a postmodern view, from a postmodern angle, from a postmodern perspective, identity is fragmented and constructed. However, the poem advocates for a stable core of conscience, resisting dissolution into spectacle. And the image of the closet shelf resonates with hidden truths versus public facades online. The setting sun reminds us that in the end, social validation fades, but self-confrontation remains. Thus, the poem critiques modern society's obsession with image, urging individuals to prioritize conscience over applause. So these are the 5 important questions which were asked in the 2025 mains compulsory question, that is called the unseen passage. And yes, this unseen passage, all the aspirants can do well if they know that how to scan it, how to marvel on it, and how to procure good marks. So students, those who are aspiring to become future IAS officers with English literature as their optional, and it would be a blessing in disguise if you come to know about OSN Academy, about Dr. Agarwal sir, who has been teaching UPSC past 26, 27 years, and you may be a part to get all my guidance, the study material books, the test series, and everything. Thank you. I hope